Rich Stergulz here, and I want to do a quick demo for you so we can have a little bit of fun working with what we did in the last bit of structure. We can do it a little bit here. I'm going to have a little bit of fun mapping out planes of the face. But first, let's jump right in. Here's my palette. Something very simple. Nothing that major. I just have black, white, alizarin crimson, a brownish pink, a burnt umber. And I like this. It's kind of a foundation umber. It's like a warm white. And then I've got a yellow ochre. I've got a cad yellow light, a red light, a cobalt teal, and a cobalt blue. All right, so firstly, let's get a little bit of drawing done. And I like to use that brown pink. Wet it down a little bit. And just get our area mapped in, formatted to what we want. So right there, I've got a format of where I'm putting it on my canvas. It could be down here, it could be over here, it could be this big, but this right here is the format. That's all I'm interested in right now. Nothing specific. So right at this point, I'd like to draw that center line, get that mapped in. Right in there. Side of the head now. As we talked about earlier, get my 2/3 in. We can start the ear. And as you can see, he's got a longer face. We won't worry too much about where that beard ends up because that's probably going to change. And as you can see, it all connects. Look at that circle right there in that face. Just loosely popping some stuff in. Like I said, things will change. I'll get a little bit more dialed in as we go. I'm going to pop in some shadowed areas. Just linear for right now. That'll change once I start mapping in my planes. Alright, and as you know, right at the end of the nostril wing, if you draw a straight line up, that's usually where that tear duct is. So let's get this shape in really quickly. This eye socket. And as I'm drawing this down, I'm always constantly comparing what's across it, what's above it, and what's below it. So if I do this, I'm trying to match up those irises. Make sure they're where they're supposed to be. Here again, just kind of mapping things out. I don't have anything written in stone just yet. Draw a straight line up. See where that point of that beard is? Right in there. Alrighty, I'm pretty happy with him so far. Let's get this other collar in. Right below the beard here. And if you notice, it connects right there to the middle of his beard. Right in there. And then the shoulder is just below it. On this side, they're very similar. So all I'm going to do is scoot right across and pop in just a little nick right now. Just to kind of map it out and see where it is. Alrighty, so now I've got them all blocked in with my linear drawing. Now I'm going to take that same brown pink, I'm going to grab a little bit of burnt umber with it just to kind of knock it back a tiny bit, and I'm going to grab just a little bit of that warm white. And what I'm mixing right now is a shadow feel. And by the way, I'm only using terp. I'm not using any kind of mediums. I think that paint is manufactured well enough today that you don't have to worry about too many mediums. So terp is about the only thing I use. And all I'm going to do is color it in, basically. I'm keeping this very, very simple, this demo. Usually if I'm painting at home and I'm painting for a commission, I'm using a lot of temperature changes. I'm using a lot of color. A lot of color notes, a lot of different color notes. Alright, and I'm going to do the same with the other shapes. So I'm going to take that cobalt blue, a little bit of burnt umber. I want to knock it back just a touch. And I'm going to use that for the shadow. No white this time. So this will be the shadow of the shirt. Just kind of get it in that general area. Because like I said, things change. I will be constantly checking my drawing as I go. Alright, and then let's get the light part of the shirt. Since I'm here, I might as well block all that in right now. Get that taken care of. All right. And usually before I go into the lights, I like to get the background white taken care of. So I'm going to get into that really quickly, and I'm just going to use that cobalt blue because I want to have color harmony throughout my painting. So I want to keep using that cobalt because of the shirt, but this time I'm going to grab way more of the burnt umber. So I get kind of a nice warm gray. And here again, keeping all my shapes very general. Nothing is written in stone just yet. Going to warm up that left side just a touch. As you can see, there's a nice warm gray right there, so I want to capture that. A little bit too dark. So just come back in with some white. Lighten it a bit. And the secret is not to paint over what you just put there, but to put it next to it so that you can compare it. If you paint it over the top of it, then you can't really compare it. So I can see that I need just a little bit more light. That's better. And if it runs into it, you know, into the edge of your portrait, let it happen. You know, edge of the lines, let that happen. That's good. Especially in the shadow side. You want a nice soft edge on that shadow side. I like that color, so I'm going to bring a little bit of it into the top of his head right here. That'll help his head turn. I like it right here as well. A little bit right in there. A little bit right on that cheekbone. And then of course his beard. A little too dark. I want to go a little bit lighter with that. Here we go. And all I'm seeing right now are shapes. I'm trying not to see any detail. I just want to gather information right now with planes. Later on when I go to detail, I'll start to get more specific with my edges, with my color notes, with my temperature notes, which is way more important than your color notes. And the difference of that is, if you look at this gray, it's a lot warmer than this is. So even though these are all color notes, to me they are temperature notes. They're way more important. I have a warm light and I have cold shadows, so I need to throw cold in my shadows, and you'll see the difference when I go into my warms right in here, how much warmer this will get. This will automatically get colder. But right now, since there's no real hot warms in here just yet. This looks warm compared to this blue. So that'll change up as we go. Alright, I'm just going to scrub in some at the top here. I want that nice and soft. I'm going to grab a little bit of the black, a little bit of the yellow ochre. Make a nice green for that transition going off into that dark. Because that dark is going to get a lot more opaque as I start to build more and more. Alright, here's the fun part. Let's do some of the midtones now in the light side of the face. And usually when I go to the light side of the face, I like to grab white first. Color harmony is always really good in your paintings. I'm going to grab a mixture of the red light, a little bit of the yellow ochre, and because of that gray that's in my brush, I'm getting a really nice flesh tone happening here. So what I'll usually do is across the face, in the middle of the face, since there's more flesh, that means there's more blood. So it's going to be a lot more red and ruddy looking. So I'm going to start off my reds here and see how that looks. And I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to keep that for now. Thinking about the planes. Building that nose. Building those eye sockets. Building everything around there. And if you notice, I don't blend much. I'm not a big blender. I like to chop all these color notes in first. And then after I get them put in, that's when I like to go back and soften edges. You'll find it's way more efficient, keeps the paint a lot cleaner. Let's just put a little red note up there. Let's come over here. I like to put a little bit on the cheek. Look at that cheekbone right there, and then it connects right to the eye socket. Pop in a little bit of something on that ear. And then down in the neck, I'm going to use a little bit of what I've got here, but I'm going to grab a little bit of my background color. I like to gray down the neck a little bit so that helps pop out that chin and that jawline. So as I'm painting that, I'll neutralize it just a little bit. And if you see it, see how it's just a little bit colder? I like to make it a little bit more neutral and a little bit colder. That neck isn't that important. What's important is this up in here, these eyes. You know, you're taught all your life to make eye contact when you meet somebody. I feel it's the same with a portrait. Just as soon as you see a portrait, you make contact with their eyes. I like this little bit of gray red, so I'm going to introduce little bits of it here and there. Just small little color notes of places that I know are going to recede. All right. Now, before I go too far in the light, I'm going to make a darker halftone. This time I'm going to go warmer. So that means I'm going to grab a little bit more of my yellow ochre. I'm not going to dip into that yellow light just yet. So I'm going to go a little bit warmer with that yellow ochre and with my red light. And this is the area where I like to introduce that color note, is more often to the shadowed areas. And you'll see it'll start to turn your subject right on the edge there. Without much blending, if at all. Like I said, I don't really like to blend that much. And just keep on applying that right next to those shadowed areas. Let's go a little bit underneath the nose here. A little bit right in there. And then now I can bring some of that up in here. Alright, and I'm going to grab a little bit of that brown pink. A little bit of burnt umber. And a little bit of yellow ochre. So all I'm doing is making a darker halftone. And I'm going to start to develop softer transitions here into my shadows. Now, as you can see, we have a nice edge right here. It's only a firm edge, it's not a hard edge. This is a firm edge. There's really, internally, there's really no hard edges on him. This is probably one of the hardest edges that's up there right now. So everywhere else, just a nice smooth transition. So as I'm applying these pigments, these next color notes, I'm barely pressing. And see how that gives it a nice turn? Brush pressure is very, very important. Alright, now I want to go a little bit colder. Like I said, when we go to the neck, I like to gray down my color just that little bit. So all I did was grab a little bit of the cobalt blue and put it in that mixture. And I can get that nice shadow feel underneath that beard. And see how that goes away? It's a nice shadow feel right there. Alright, let's do this. I wanna cover this up a little bit here. I know it's a small little shape, but it's a little annoying to me. So I wanna knock it back a little bit here. And so I just mix up that value again, the shadow of the shirt. Burnt umber, I put in a little black this time, burnt umber and your cobalt blue. Nice soft touch. And I'm going to grab a little bit of white. And I'm going to make a transition value from the shirt shadow to the beard. I like this value a lot, so I'm going to go up into the mouth here and reestablish that dark in the corner. So when I put on my lights, my shadow family and my light family will match in intensity and have harmony. In fact, let's have a little fun with that up here. We even see a little bit of it over here. Not much over there, but I want to get a little bit of separation right here. And then maybe right in here. Alright. Now with that same color, I'm going to go more intense with the blue, because he has blue-green eyes. But I'm going to start off with the blue first. I grab a tiny bit of black. And let's start to develop a little bit of the iris. Just to have a little color harmony and everything, I like to spread it out a bit. All right. And also I use my finger a lot. You know, if you are a little bit concerned about the toxicity, just go ahead and wear the plastic gloves. They help out quite a bit. I just don't like the feel of them. So I'm not too concerned about the toxicity, but I like using my fingers just to kind of run things into each other a little bit. Alrighty. Now for the fun part, I love putting on the lighter color flesh. He starts to come to life that way. And here again, I'm going to grab my whites first. I'll start making new piles. I like to make new piles every time I mix a color note. I'm going to go in with this warmer white, little of my yellow ochre, a little bit of red. Mix a nice big pile too. Don't be too frugal. This way you'll have enough to be able to cover that whole area that you're looking at. If not, then you're going to have to remix it. You're going to have to try to match it as close as you possibly can. And here again, I just like to paint up to the line. I usually don't blend until the last possible minute. And that's just because I want to make sure all my planes are where they're supposed to be. Work this red across the face. And here again, all I'm thinking about is temperature changes, value changes, and where the bones are. You know, cheekbone, temple bone. You know, you've got the temple bone right going up this way and into the forehead. All that matters. I have to make sure that everything is in its place. Alright, now with that same mixture, I'm going to add a tiny bit of that cobalt teal and a little bit of the yellow ochre. Make somewhat of a grayed down green in with my flesh tone. And I like to usually put that up here. Especially on bald men, it seems to help turn that cranium. You know, remember, you're painting a ball. So all that has to be there. It has to turn. And I like this color and I like this value, so I'm going to have a little bit of fun with it coming down the beard here. And this will be my dark light. So it'll be my mid lights. And what I mean by that is right in here you see some of the mid dark lights, and then you see the really hot lights right in here coming across these planes. So I'll put those in a little bit. And when you paint hair or beards, don't worry so much about trying to paint strands of hair. Just go ahead and pop in those planes first, and then you can separate all that stuff later on. And if you notice, as I went towards the shadow, I got softer with my touch. I wanted just to barely push that paint around. As I come off into the light source here, I'll press harder because I want to deposit more paint. Alright, let's get that final light source on. And all I'm going to do is take that pink that I started with, I'm going to put a bunch of white in it, and I'm going to grab yellow ochre and a little bit of this yellow light this time. Because I want to go warmer. And I'm still thinking planes. I'm still thinking, okay, where does that plane, where does that light hit that plane? I don't care about the wrinkles in his forehead yet. I don't care about any of that. All I care is where that plane is hitting, that light plane is hitting that head. Once again, just block in that beard with simple shapes. Don't see strands of hair. That'll drive you crazy. And for the white of the eye, I do like to use a little bit of that flesh color, but all I'll do is gray it down a little bit with some of that blue of the shirt. You know, just something really simple like that. A lot of times when people put blue in the white of the eye, it ends up looking neon, and it's way too light. Way too light. So when you do that, it looks fake. So I always like to put a little bit of red in it, a little bit of the flesh color in there. Alright, about another minute or so, I'm going to start blending some edges. And it'll start to make it look more realistic instead of so robotic. Remember, I'm still putting on planes. I'm still trying to capture that good structure. That volume. I need to show volume in this, and if I have a whole bunch of flat planes on here, I can't really get that volume I'm looking for, even when I render, you know, meaning softening edges. Alright, let's soften some edges here and there, and then we can start to get into a little bit of detail before we wrap this one up. I didn't want to do a complete portrait for you because I feel that finishing a portrait is very personal. You have your own style and your own technique that you really like, and I don't want to stifle any of that. I just kind of want to get share the basics with you to get a really nice structurally sound face, so that when you do block it in and you put in the color notes that you're seeing up here, that it'll have a really nice volume feel to it, that, you know, he feels nice and round. So I'm just going to look at edges and think, okay, this is a firmer edge, but this over here is a softer edge. So all I'm going to do is just run my brush on it very lightly. I'm barely pressing. Same with up here. And if you notice, I'm softening edges without completely blending it out. I still want some of that color in there. I want that interaction. Bob's gonna like me. I'm making him look younger. Nice smooth transitions up here. Same with over here. You know, these are called turning edges. And they have to have a nice soft feel to them. Same with the nose right here. And this also is at a point in the painting when you can start to make it your sitter. You know, look at his nose right here. Nice, round, beautiful nose. I can make these transitions nice and soft, which will help that nose stay nice and round. This over here, push it around, push it into the skin if you need to, the color of the beard. Don't be afraid to, like I said, let those colors run into each other. Because I want a nice soft feel over here. And if you want to go in different directions now for the beard, go ahead. Start to give it a more realistic feel. And when I do that, I like to push on my brush a little bit so that it opens up. Here again, bring it up into the face. Don't be afraid to overlap color. That causes color harmony throughout, and it's perfect. That's what you're looking for. Okay, so I'm looking at this area right over here, and look at the distance from here to here. I keep correcting this, and I'm pulling it away from here. So I know that I need to come back into it and reestablish that sideburn. So I come out here and visually see that it's probably about right there instead. Which in turn might mean that I need to maybe move the ear over just a touch, which is easy enough to do. You know, when you have a mistake like this, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to correct it. It'll all work out, and it'll work out better in the end because it'll look good. The drawing is the most important. All I'm doing right now is just pushing and pulling paint. An oil painting technique. It's just I'm using my finger instead of a brush. I don't want to apply more paint, I just want to push what I have up there around. And when I correct something, I keep it a little bit more angular than round. I figure later on when I go to finish, I can smooth out these edges right in here. I can make them a little bit more organic. But I don't know if I can get that perfect roundness from the start. So I just kind of like to square things off first and make them angular and then go back into them. Draw your lines across again and make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. Alright, that looks a little better. I was thinking that his face was a little too wide over there. So I'm much happier with that. I'm going to go back into that background and reestablish that side of his face there. Thinking about where that brow bone is, then the cheekbone, and then the fleshy part of the cheek. See what I mean by things changing throughout the course of the painting? So don't be afraid to jump in there. Things will change. You'll correct things, and you'll correct them for the better. Yeah, I like that much better. That looks much better. All right. So I just need to slide that ear over just a little bit and we'll be all right. But overall, that looks much better. I'm much happier with that. Okay, I'll slide the ear over, and then after that, let's jump in the eyes, and I'll start to finish up the eyes, do the nose, do a little bit more on the features, a little bit more on the mouth, and then we'll wrap it up and let you guys have at it and have as much fun as I'm having right now. Alright, looks like I might have to wait for that to dry a little bit. To get the rest of that ear on. So let's go back to the original block in and let that set up. And once that sets up, then we can go back in with that detail. All I'll do at this point is make sure that I soften some edges, because when I go to paint again tomorrow or the next day, I don't want to have to fight edges to try to make them soft when I could just make them soft right now and be done with them. Get a little bit of the anti-helix developed, a little bit of the helix developed right here. The fold. Just reestablish a little bit of the drawing so that when I come back in tomorrow, I can really start to dial his ear in. Alright. Enough with the ears. Let's get in the eyes. Let's have some fun in here. This is my favorite part. I love painting the eyes. Really starts to bring the people alive. And at this point, I'm trying to be a little bit more careful. I don't want to have to backtrack and redraw everything all over again. So I'm trying to be a little bit more precise with my strokes, with my color notes, with my value notes, and make sure that it starts to become him. Shoot across to the other eye. A little darker in here, so I'm going to grab a little bit more of the burnt umber and black instead of that brown pink. I want it a little bit cooler and darker. And all I'm doing here is just reinforcing some of those shadows. At the same time drawing. If I have to reestablish something, that means that I've misplaced something and I need to correct it. And if you're anything like me, I have to correct things as I go. If not, when I'm comparing stuff together and it doesn't match, it's not a good feeling. So as you can see, I'm getting a little bit darker and darker as I go. And once I do that, I'll show you how to reestablish some of your mid darks and some of your transitioning darks off into your transitioning lights into your light source. Bring a little bit of that flesh color into the beard again, just to have a nice smooth transition. You can even soften a little bit of this. Take a little paint from the background and go ahead and rub it right over the top of that line of the outside of the face. Just let it disappear. There's no need to describe that area there. I really want to describe things up in here. Alright, I'm going to go to the shadow side of the eye and start to finish. So like I said, so that you guys can have a little bit of fun. I'm sure you're eager to get something going here and a little bit tired of watching me paint. You know, and you get anxious and you really want to create something, and I can't blame you there because I feel that way too. And all I'm doing is just hitting it with some of these nice small color notes. trying to keep it simple for right now so that when I get to my second day of painting, I have everything pretty well established. So when I sit down and paint tomorrow, I don't have to change a whole lot of stuff. Just kind of tweak things here and there. Alright, and here's those halftones that I was talking about traveling off into the light source. As you can see, they're a little bit lighter than the shadow, but they are darker than the light source. And to make it a little bit more fun, I'm going to punch up the color a little bit here. I put the yellow light into it. Once again, when you go to blend and edge, nice soft hand. And all these little strokes that I'm putting on here right now, these little color notes, they're starting to make it him. I'm trying to be way more precise of where I put them. I want to stay in the same value, you know, the value that I'm looking for, but I'm also drawing. I'm also seeing what's him. Make a little bit lighter halftone. For that bottom eyelid there. And right now I'm bouncing around a little bit because I want to bring the painting up together. I don't want to get too far detailed with one piece of information. I like bringing up my paintings all at once. I find that it causes a lot more efficient color harmony to happen when I do that. Just re-establishing the sclera right now. I don't want to put in too much detail because, like I said, my second day of painting, that's when I'll start to really sit down. The painting starts to get a lot slower. I get a lot more detailed. I'm not so chunky with my color notes. I'm more precise. Alright, I'll do a last few little things here, and then I want to get you guys started and have a little fun. And like I said, if I get a little bit too ahead and you guys want to pause the video and paint along with me, that would be wonderful. It's a really awesome way to learn. I've done that early on in my career as well with other artists that I've really loved. And it helped out a lot. Because you get to see it happening right there. And then you can follow along with it, which is just priceless when it comes to learning something. Alright, just to dress it up before I wrap it up here, let's put a little highlight in the eye. Right there. I like to put a little bit of darker one down first and then the white right over the top of it. Another way of doing it is use the back of your brush. Just go ahead and dip it in your paint, pull it out, and when you pull it out, see how it makes a point? Then all you have to do is just find that point, follow it, and gently tap it on there. And it makes a nice dot, nice small dot. Because sometimes the brush gets a little too carried away and explodes it out too much. And one of the worst things I've seen in portraits is people get a little carried away with the highlight of the eye, and all of a sudden that highlight just completely takes over the eye. And it's way too much, way too much. So just a nice little dot is enough. Let me develop a little bit of bone structure right here. This way when I paint tomorrow, I can see those planes. There's a plane right here on the bridge of the nose, and then right here it's catching light. And then there's another plane coming down this way towards the cheek, which is a little cooler. And then we'll get warmer with our final light sources that are happening in here. And then of course, you know, I'll start to chop in lights for the beard. And we'll get warmer in areas. This is lighter this way now, and you know, we'll start to develop that more and more. Alright, just one little last hit right here. I like to soften edges. If I know I'm not going to paint the rest of the day, I'll look at any edges that are really hard, like this one right here, right underneath the eye. And I'll just dab, just lightly dab that edge so that I don't have to fight that tomorrow when I go to paint. These edges up here, same thing. I just want to lightly dab that so I don't have to fight that edge tomorrow. And what I mean by fighting that edge is trying to make it softer and softer because it's just way too hard. You know, I would rather you paint a little bit softer edged than firmer edged. And the reason why is because you can always find those firmer edges later on. So just those firmer edges and softer edges, lost edges. You'll have a nice transition of varied edges, which makes a painting very interesting to look at. Just gently running my brush across this just to lighten it up a bit and push and pull some of that flesh tone and that hair together so that we have that nice turn. That side of the head has to go that way. Remember, this is a ball. So just push and pull here and there. And then we can reestablish that ear again. I can pull that over a little bit. Let's lose this edge, this outside edge. Not important. Remember, you just need to paint important things. Don't worry about unimportant stuff. Edges like this, let them go away. That's in the shadow. Just let it go away. Little edges like this, let that go away, nice and soft. Some lighter halftones going into the light source. Eventually I'll get a really nice light yellow for my light source. Keep an eye on those brow bones, you know, those bones, very, very important. And as I'm doing this, I'm still drawing. Every stroke I put down there, I'm trying to put it in the place it's supposed to be. I know sometimes it looks like I'm brushing a little chaotically here, but I really am trying to make sure that I have the strokes where I want them. You know, so that it ends up looking more like him and not just some random person. Getting down into that cheek now, I'm going to grab a little bit of my brown pink and a little bit of my red light. Because I want that cheek to get nice and rosy. Same with the nose. Get a little bit of a deeper red. Where that nose, I help that pop out quite a bit doing that. Alright, we'll go into that nose a little bit more. Start to develop that bridge of that nose. All of this right in here. Make sure I get that right value. I don't want to backtrack at this point, so I'm really concentrating on what values I see up here. Trying to get really nice subtle transitions, still keeping an eye on the planes, making sure that I get the planes in their right place. Like I said, just keep comparing back and forth, back and forth. What does it look like? You know, what does that skull look like in there? I'm going to mix up a little bit of that background and correct that side of the face over here and the top of his head. I want to get that established just right before I go too much with my final lights, because when I put on my final lights, I want to make sure that all my planes are correct where I'm at. I don't want to have to guess at that point, because I'm way too far in the painting to start guessing. I should know where everything is at this point, or needs to be. And this is where I'll correct the top of the head. That's a wonderful thing about oils. Even though this painting's a day old, I can still push it around with my finger. Run these color notes right next to each other. Look at this gray-green going right into that orange. Just a really nice turning edge. Have a little bit of fun with it over here. Just kind of push it around. Like I said, don't be afraid to let color run into other color. That's what causes color harmony to happen in all these paintings. Then I feel much better about that, so we can pop his hair back in on that side. That is going to be a little bit too cold for the light side. And you'll find out that when you're painting areas like this, that is so deep that there's an absence of light, even though it would be a cold shadow, because of all this light source that's bouncing all over the place right on this side of the face, this would be just a little bit warmer than what's happening over here. There's a lot less light bouncing around in this socket. So over here, I may grab a little bit of my brown pink and a little bit of that gray, warm it up just a touch, but I would pop that in there. Give it more of a warm feeling. Yeah, we're really getting some nice rich color now, nice rich shadows. When I start popping on the light source, we'll get some really nice contrast between light and shadow family. Just hitting some darks down in here. I want to make sure that my shadows stay consistent and harmonize. That's a little too light, so I want to make that a bit darker. All I'm going to do is my brown, pink, and black this time. Just a little tiny bit of my flesh color. I thought that nostril wing writing here got a little too light. There we go, that's better. I don't want to bring that out too far. And then if I need to, I can always cut back into it with the cheek shadow. Right in there. I don't know if you can see that. It might be a little bit hard to see on camera, but trust me, it looks great. I'm just going to hit a little bit of light source over here on the hair. In fact, let me warm that up just a little bit. Got a little too cold on me. That's better. And you'll see what I'm talking about with the temperature changes as I start throwing on some of the light source. You'll see that this yellow that I'm putting on right now won't be that far off. Alright, so let me just put in a few more here. Let me throw on some light source, and then let's wrap this up so that you guys can get back at it and get painting. I just wanted to show you some of the darker halftones. If you notice that over here you see these little darks that I put in here now, that really starts to help more of the planes show. Very, very important to show those planes and all the color notes that you have. So when I go to put on my final light source, I can really get some powerful light in there with just simply my yellow light with a little yellow ochre, just a little yellow ochre. And the reason why I'm putting the yellow ochre in there is because I don't want such a cold yellow. White makes everything cold, so if I put white in that yellow, it'll get a little too cold and pasty looking. So that's why I want to grab a little bit of the yellow ochre just to kind of give it more of an orange feel. So all I have to do is come back in here, look to see where those light sources are hitting. And pop them in. So if you notice, I'm just popping them on right now. I haven't really blended a whole lot. I'll take away some of those edges as I go. Last little few hits before I start blending some things. I'll have to save the ear for another day, I believe. But I just wanted to get some of these darker halftones on here and show you that if you don't have them in there, you don't get as much turn as you would like. You know, we need to have some of those turning edges in there, those subtle little changes in value and color temperature. So now I just come back in, a brush with no pigment on it, and just soften some of these edges. Just kind of work them a little bit. He's an older gentleman, so I won't soften him too much, but I also don't want him too harsh. I need those turning edges. See how just a couple of little rubs here will pull those color notes together so that they don't look separated. Few more little hits here and there. And as you can see, it really starts to come together with all these little color notes and all these little strokes. I'm not being very, very precise, but I'm just trying to get this down and fast for you guys so that you'll understand that putting these color notes together and trying to find the planes is more important than trying to find the right color. So all these temperature notes, temperature notes, not color notes, but temperature notes are more important. Warms and colds, over and over again. Alrighty, a little bit on the lip right here, and let's call it a day. Let you guys get painting. All in all, I think he came out pretty well. I'm very happy with him so far. You know, I would work on him a little more and really dial in a lot of detail and make it a little bit more him. Get more of his essence and more of his detail. So remember, as you're painting this, color is good to know and to know how to mix, but it's more about the temperature of the color, not the color itself. Okay, so warms and colds. If, like you've always heard, if you have a warm light, you have cold shadows, and if you have a cold light, you have warm shadows. So as I'm painting this, I'm thinking to myself, even though I have a lot of reds in the shadow, they're colder than the light source. So that makes them more colder reds, which makes it work. So Thank you again for watching this. I hope you got a lot out of it. I really enjoyed painting this for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'd love to talk to you about anything we're doing here today. So thanks again and enjoy.